So if you were waiting to find out which Ohio State quarterback would take the first rep of the spring, as that being an indication of anything, it was Devin Brown. Devin Brown was the first quarterback to go through the queue today, and pretty much all of the quarterback periods that I watched today. First spring practice here Tuesday at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. I'm Nathan Baird from cleveland.com. Stephen Means, Andrew Gillis. I was the one who was kind of watching the quarterbacks the most today, sort of focusing on them. And maybe the most notable things were Brown goes first. You had a sort of a separation for a lot of the stuff they did between the three veteran guys. We're putting Lincoln Kienholz in with Will Howard and Brown as the veteran guys. And then the two true freshmen, so off to themselves, Julian Sayin and Aaron Noland. And got a lot of reps in to do. Ryan Day said they got in 150 reps today at practice, which he thought was a huge amount. They're going to try to push that as much as they can to get guys a lot of reps. And he said that I thought it was a little bit important. Like the first quarter of spring practice, they're just throwing guys out there to play and let them kind of feel it out and get their feet under them. And before they start getting too worried about the hierarchy of guys. But, Stephen, how much do you read into the fact that Devin Brown was number one? There's a bit of a seniority thing there. And what would he have to do to stay number one?
Be better than Will Howard. I know that's a very simple answer, and maybe it's oversimplification. Nothing about today shocked me. I mean, we've had conversations about this for the last couple of months of who we thought would go number one, and I think we all kind of settled on Devin Brown just because of that seniority thing here, and Will Howard's probably still learning the offense. It doesn't shock me that maybe for the first quarter they're just rolling guys, because it is a part of this that has to be development. Even with the two freshmen, there were times, just because I'm watching the offense, sometimes you just see stuff. You would see Aaron Noland with Travion Henderson, or you would say Julian Sayin with Quinshon Judkins, just because they're rolling guys, trying to get everybody developed. But it's when you get to that second quarter, how does it start to narrow in? Because Ryan Day also did admit that this is a different world now. It's not a guarantee that you can go into fall. Devin Brown said some great stuff on Monday. But it's a whole other situation when it's something in your face and you have to actually deal with it. So it's going to be a continuing fluid thing that we have to talk about here. But I do think I'm wondering who's number one in practice 6. And I think that's going to tell us a lot, because maybe for these first couple of practices, you do give the go-ahead to the guy who does know the system better. But once they get through that first scrimmage, is Devin Brown still number one, or is Will Howard number one at that point? Because to the point of what you asked me, how does Devin Brown stay ahead? I think that first scrimmage, is he better than Will Howard, is how he stays ahead. Maybe that's oversimplifying things, but I do think at its base point, that's what this is.
From a talent standpoint, Devin Brown was in position last year. He pulled ahead in the quarterback competition at one point in the offseason, and it was just performance, really. It was consistency of performance, some turnover issues that Kyle McCord was better and put him in the front there. Obviously, both Ryan Day and Chip Kelly, when we talked to them later, Andrew, were pretty, not urgent to some extent on what's going on at quarterback. At the same time, Ryan Day did say that thing about, in the past it's always been, well, maybe if it would be great if somebody emerged by end of the spring. And he's still kind of saying, I guess, the same thing. They're not. The word Chip Kelly used was organic, that, you can't put artificial. It's kind of what I was saying last year about that between McCord and Brown. You can't really put artificial dates on this. It's better to just kind of let it unfold at its speed. But I guess, what are you hoping to see out of the quarterbacks on Thursday, or as we get even deeper into spring practice?
Well, I think there's not really an all-encompassing answer that you can look for from the quarterbacks, because with Will Howard, you want to see him pick up the offense, right? You want to see him pick things up really quickly, because this is a guy who has been in college football for a handful of years, I should say. Been in college football, he's the most tenured quarterback on the roster. He's the guy who came in with the promise of, hey, look, you have 1 year left, let's make the most of it. And that's what he wants to do, and that's really something that he's trying to, he's really focused on. He mentioned that a bunch of times when we talked to him earlier in the week. So you have that with Will Howard. You also want to see Lincoln Kienholz develop, right? You want to see how he looks in his first full year. So I think there are different guys that have different standards. Aaron Nolan's standard is not Devin Brown's standard, and vice versa, right? You know, all these guys, you want to see different things. So for me, at the top of the depth chart, though, I think Will Howard's the offense. You just want to see him pick it up. And Devin Brown, I think the confidence is there. You just want to see him apply that because you haven't really seen it a ton, because you have to remember he was hurt a lot during the 2023 season, right? So he had all of that time where he's competing for the number one job, and then he gets hurt, and you're not taking number one reps during practice during the regular season. That's just not something that teams do. You can't afford the time. So he's not really practicing with the ones a lot. He's hurt a lot. You want to see him get back into that rhythm and look really sharp. So I think each quarterback kind of has their own separate criteria, and not to be cliche, but everybody's running their own race. And I think that that's kind of, everybody has a different standard, and I think that that's the way you have to look at this quarterback room right now.
I'm curious, too, if they're going to keep the freshmen on freshman island, sort of, just kind of off by themselves for the entire spring, or if there's a point where guys start to get folded into that other group and get to do more things. Julian Sayin really looks the part, I think, coming in as a true freshman. Looks like he's physically a different specimen than Aaron Noland is. Although, I will say Aaron Noland, too, the first drill that they did that was they opened with kind of a quarterback, those three veteran quarterbacks against the twos on defense, the younger ones against the ones. But then they went off to just their drills, and the first one that they did was just a simple, like, take the snap, turn, and throw off to your left. And Aaron Noland, of those five, was the only one to put like three like dead in the center of the little target that they have. He had, I thought, a really good day from an accuracy standpoint, but Sayin looked good too. And I'm curious, those guys are on a bit of a different development arc, obviously, being so young. So what does anything happen over the course of spring where somebody there starts to make a little move, or are they fine just kind of keeping them compartmentalized off to the side, let the older guys do what they have to do to get all of the reps in that they have to get with the ones? Just something to watch, and we'll be watching it. So get the text 614-350-3315. As soon as we see something, that's where we'll be coming with it. And listen to Buckeye Talk wherever you can find podcasts.